As we stand at the threshold of this new day on this Wednesday, December 10th, 2025, we gather with intention, recognizing that nothing about this moment is ordinary. Every hour before us carries the potential to shift atmospheres, to realign what has gone off course, and to open doors that heaven has already ordained. So we come, not casually, not passively, but with a conscious decision to command the morning, to speak into the day, and to anchor every step in prayer. This is the hour where we silence the noise around us and awaken the authority within us. The day does not decide for us. We declare what the day will become. We call our minds into focus, our spirits into position, and our faith into motion. We acknowledge the one who holds time in his hands, and we invite his wisdom, his clarity, and his strength to govern every decision we make. As we begin this prayer, let your heart rise above every distraction. Let expectations settle in your spirit. Let the awareness of God's presence overshadow every concern. This is your moment to align with heaven, to speak purpose into your path, and to proclaim that this day will unfold according to divine order. Today we command the day with prayer. As this day begins, aligning your spirit with God becomes the quiet but powerful decision that determines the atmosphere you will carry into every moment. Before you speak to anyone, before tasks begin pulling at your attention, before the demands of the world attempt to shape your posture, there is an invitation to come into stillness and recognize the one who breathes life into your lungs. It is in these early moments that you choose what voice will govern your thoughts, what truth will anchor your emotions, and what presence will lead you into the day. By aligning your spirit with God, you pause long enough to acknowledge that you are not stepping into this day alone. You are stepping into it with divine accompaniment, with the wisdom that sees beyond what your natural eyes perceive, and with the strength that does not diminish under pressure. You shift your inner world from reacting to life into partnering with the Creator who already knows the path you will walk. This alignment is not rushed, not forced, not mechanical. It is the gentle opening of your heart before God, allowing His peace to settle where anxiety once tried to claim space. In these moments of alignment, you begin by letting your spirit exhale. Every weight left over from yesterday, every concern waiting on the horizon of today, every quiet worry tucked somewhere in the back of your mind is placed into God's hands. You release your grip on what you cannot control, not because you are ignoring it, but because you recognize that carrying what was never meant for you only drains the strength you need for what truly matters. Aligning your spirit means allowing God to reorder your thoughts, to clear the noise that clouds your perception, and to restore clarity where confusion once tried to settle. It is the act of letting His presence become the lens through which you see the day. Suddenly, the things that felt overwhelming lose their power. The distractions that tugged on your attention lose their urgency. The heaviness that sat on your chest loosens its hold. You begin to breathe differently, think differently, and see differently as your soul aligns with the one who formed you. As you settle into this alignment, something inside you begins to awaken, a deeper awareness that you belong to God and that your life is not subject to circumstance, but anchored in divine intention. This is where you place your mind under heaven's authority. This is where your emotions find stability in God's truth, rather than in the shifting winds of daily challenges. This is where your spirit rises above the limitations placed by fear, doubt, or fatigue. Aligning your spirit is the foundation for spiritual clarity, the center point where your inner world finds stillness and focus. It is here that you remember your identity and reclaim your power. You are not aimlessly stepping into the day hoping for strength. You are intentionally connecting with the source of all strength. You are not trying to gather your own wisdom to navigate your responsibilities. You are tapping into divine guidance that rises above human reasoning. In this alignment, your spirit becomes steady, your thoughts become settled, and your heart becomes secure. The more intentional you are about aligning yourself with God in the morning, the more you notice how it shapes your responses throughout the day. You begin to walk differently. You carry a quiet confidence that does not come from your own ability, but from the awareness that God is leading, covering, and empowering you. This alignment places your spirit in a posture of readiness. It opens your ears to hear what God is whispering. It sharpens your discernment so that you recognize what deserves your attention and what does not. It protects your peace because you are grounded in something greater than circumstance. You are no longer swayed by every shift around you. You are rooted, steady, and aligned with the one who governs the universe, yet holds space for your personal journey. As you continue aligning yourself with God, your inner strength begins to rise, not by striving, but by surrendering, not by forcing things to work the way you think they should, but by trusting that God is shaping the day in ways you may not yet understand. This alignment allows faith to rise where worry once tried to dominate. It allows hope to fill the places where discouragement once lingered. It allows courage to take the place of hesitation. When your spirit aligns with God, you find that the things meant to distract you lose their influence, and the things meant to strengthen you become clearer. You become aware of God's nearness, his movements, and his invitations. Your spirit begins to anticipate his direction, his favor, and his protection. You operate not from fear, scarcity, or uncertainty, but from a place of divine partnership. In these sacred morning moments, aligning your spirit with God does more than calm your mind. It repositions your entire life. You begin to step out of the limitations you placed on yourself, and you step into the possibilities that God has ordained. You tap into a peace that becomes your shield. You receive wisdom that becomes your guide. You embrace clarity that settles your heart. It is in this alignment where your strength is renewed, your purpose is affirmed, and your identity is reinforced. You begin to feel the weight of God's presence, the comfort of his voice, and the assurance of his promises hovering over your day. The more you align, the more your inner world mirrors God's stability. You stop carrying the burdens that once felt heavy. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. You stop shrinking under pressures that God already equipped you to overcome. As this alignment deepens, you realize that your steps are not random. Your encounters are not accidental. Your influence is not small. There is purpose in the way God positions you, leads you, and strengthens you. And as you move through the day, this alignment becomes the foundation for everything else. Your thoughts flow from a place of clarity. Your decisions flow from a place of wisdom. Your words carry weight because they are shaped by truth. Your actions reflect the peace and authority you established in the morning. Even when challenges arise, the alignment you set with God keeps you grounded. When unexpected situations come, you respond from a place of strength rather than panic. When frustration tries to build, you remain anchored because you started your day rooted in divine presence. Aligning your spirit with God each morning is not a ritual, it is a lifeline. It is the space where your soul connects with heaven, where your purpose is refined, where your strength is restored, and where your path is illuminated. It is in this alignment where your day finds order, where your heart finds peace, and where your mind finds clarity. And as you continue in this posture, you begin to recognize that aligning with God is not something you do once. It is the ongoing rhythm that carries you from morning into every moment of the day. Activating divine authority to speak order, clarity, and purpose into the day begins with recognizing that your words carry weight in the spiritual realm. You are not simply waking up to face another set of routines or responsibilities. You are stepping into a day that responds to what you proclaim. Your voice has power because it is backed by the breath of God within you. When you speak, you shift atmospheres. When you declare truth, you override confusion. When you command order, you silence chaos. This is not about speaking from a place of fear or desperation. It is about speaking from a place of spiritual positioning. You understand that God has entrusted you with authority, and that authority becomes active when you use it. You do not wait for the day to tell you what it will be. You speak into the day and shape it with the words that align with heaven's intention. You set the tone before anything else tries to establish its influence. You rise with purpose, knowing that the day will follow the direction of your declaration. As you activate this authority, your spirit begins to take the lead over your emotions. You speak even when you do not yet feel the strength. You declare peace even when your mind is still settling. You command clarity even when your thoughts are trying to scatter. This is not pretending, it is aligning your voice with God's truth until your inner world shifts to match what you have spoken. Authority grows through use. Every word of life, every declaration of purpose, every command of order strengthens your spiritual posture. You are not speaking into an empty space. You are speaking into a day that has been waiting for divine instruction. The atmosphere around you begins to adjust. The heaviness that tried to settle lifts. The confusion that tried to creep in dissolves. The distractions lose their influence. When you activate your authority, you're stepping into the identity God gave you, the identity of someone who is not tossed by the winds of circumstance, but someone who commands the winds to align with divine order. And as you speak into the day, you begin to notice that authority is not loud, but it is firm, it is consistent, it is rooted in faith. This authority does not come from the volume of your voice, but from the conviction in your spirit. You know who you belong to, and you know what has been given to you. You begin declaring favor over your steps, wisdom over your decisions, protection over your journey. You speak clarity over your mind so that no confusion can cloud your judgment. You speak peace into your environment so that no chaos can steal your focus. You call forth opportunities aligned with your purpose and dismiss anything that seeks to distract or delay you. You declare strength over your body, resilience over your spirit, and focus over your assignments. Every word becomes an instrument that shapes the path you walk. Every declaration establishes boundaries around your life. The authority you carry becomes active through your intentional speech. As you continue operating in this authority, something begins to shift within you. You start to recognize the difference between reacting to the day and commanding the day. You stop surrendering your peace to circumstances. You stop waiting for things to settle before you feel grounded. You stop giving situations the power to dictate your emotional state. Instead, you step into the morning with a posture that says, everything will align because you have spoken it to be so. Divine authority removes the randomness from your day. It reminds you that you are not powerless, not passive, and not left without spiritual tools. When you activate this authority, you are drawing from a heavenly source that does not waver, does not weaken, and does not retreat. You are standing in the strength of God, and His authority flows through your declarations. As you speak order into the day, you create space for clarity. Clarity becomes the foundation of your decisions. It becomes the compass that directs your thoughts. It aligns your emotions and straightens the paths that once seemed overwhelming. When clarity is activated in your day, confusion loses its voice. The things that once felt complicated begin to simplify. The tasks that felt heavy become manageable. You begin to see where to place your energy and where to withdraw it. You know what deserves your attention and what must be released. Clarity protects your mind from spiraling into unnecessary worry. It keeps you focused on what God is doing rather than on what distractions are trying to magnify. When you speak clarity, you are not only shaping your thoughts, you are shaping the atmosphere that surrounds your assignments. You begin to walk with direction, intentionality, and purpose. Speaking purpose into the day strengthens the blueprint God has already written for your life. Purpose becomes the anchor that keeps you from drifting. When you declare purpose, You remind your spirit that everything connected to you carries significance. Your work, your relationships, your responsibilities, your progress, none of it is accidental or insignificant. Purpose reminds you that you are a carrier of influence. It awakens a deeper awareness that the day is more than a collection of hours. It is a divine appointment waiting to unfold. When you speak purpose, you invite heaven to illuminate opportunities that align with your destiny. You call forth divine encounters, meaningful conversations, and strategic moments that push you forward. You speak against delay, stagnation, and distraction. You reaffirm that your steps are ordered, guided, and covered. As you continue activating divine authority throughout your day, the atmosphere within you and around you becomes fortified. You begin to walk with a calm strength. Even in the presence of challenges, you remain anchored. Even when unexpected situations arise, you respond from stability rather than panic. Your authority does not erase difficulty, but it gives you dominion over how difficulty affects you. You are no longer moved by what tries to unsettle your spirit. You understand that the authority you carry comes from a realm higher than the circumstances you face. Your declarations continue to shape the day long after the morning has passed. Every time your words align with God's truth, they reinforce your spiritual stance. Every time you command order, you guard your peace. Every time you speak clarity, you sharpen your focus. Every time you declare purpose, you realign with destiny. The more you exercise divine authority, the more sensitive you become to the leading of God. You begin to discern the difference between what is for you and what is not. You sense when to move forward and when to wait. You recognize opportunities that carry God's fingerprint. You reject anything that brings confusion, heaviness, or distraction. Your spirit stays alert because your words have positioned you to hear clearly and respond wisely. You burst awareness. Awareness strengthens discernment. Discernment protects your path. And as all these elements align, your life begins to reflect the order you speak, the clarity you declare, and the purpose you affirm. Activating divine authority becomes a daily rhythm, a spiritual discipline, a posture of intentional living. It shapes the way you think, speak, and move. It frames your day with divine structure and sets your spirit in a position of strength. You rise each morning knowing that the day will not control you. You will command the day. Your authority becomes the force that organizes your inner world, stabilizes your emotions, and establishes your path. Through your declarations, you step into a day that is aligned with heaven, strengthened by truth, and prepared for purpose. Breaking every negative pattern and reclaiming control over your atmosphere begins with the awareness that you are not bound to the cycles that once shaped your life. You are not tied to the moods, mindsets, and habits that tried to define you in previous seasons. You are not locked into reactions that drain your energy or thoughts that pull you away from purpose. Every morning gives you a new opportunity to rise above what once limited. Negative patterns do not break by accident. They break through intention, through spiritual awareness, and through the decision to no longer allow what is familiar to dictate what is possible. When you wake up and step into the day, you carry the authority to interrupt old cycles with new declarations. You refuse to carry yesterday's heaviness into today's beginning. You refuse to allow old emotions to dominate new moments. You refuse to let fear, doubt, or frustration script the direction of your day. You begin choosing differently, thinking differently, and responding differently because you recognize that the power to shape your atmosphere starts within. As you confront these patterns, you begin recognizing where they originate. Some patterns come from past experiences that left deep impressions on your heart. Others come from learned behaviors from environments that shaped your responses, from disappointments that formed expectations, or from fears that whispered limitations. But as your spirit rises in awareness, you begin to see that these patterns no longer serve the person you are becoming. They no longer fit the strength you are stepping into. They no longer align with the destiny God has for you. Breaking these patterns requires honesty. Not harsh self-judgment, but gentle truthfulness. You acknowledge what has been pulling you off course so that you can reclaim the power that belongs to you. You begin to pull your attention away from what drains you and toward what strengthens you. You break the cycle by refusing to rehearse the thoughts that once fueled it. You interrupt it by speaking truth where lies once found comfort. You break it by declaring who you are in God instead of who your past tried to convince you to be. As you break these negative patterns, your atmosphere starts to shift. Your internal atmosphere, the thoughts you think, the emotions you allow, the expectations you cultivate begins to realign. You start to notice that the heaviness you used to wake up with begins to fade. The anxiety that once settled in your chest begins to loosen its grip. The frustration that greeted you in the morning loses its intensity. You are reclaiming control by refusing to let these patterns operate unnoticed. You speak into your atmosphere with intention. You call forth peace. You declare stillness over your mind. You call back your focus from the places where worry scatters it. You anchor your spirit in God's truth and allow His presence to regulate your inner world. When your spirit becomes calm, your atmosphere becomes calm. When your thoughts become clear, your environment becomes manageable. When your heart becomes steady, your perspective becomes stable. Breaking patterns is not only about stopping unhealthy cycles, it is about creating space for new patterns of strength, clarity, and peace to take root. Reclaiming control over your atmosphere means choosing what you allow to shape your inner world. It means refusing to be driven by external pressures. It means not allowing the emotions of others to dictate your peace. It means not permitting unexpected situations to pull you out of alignment. You begin guarding your atmosphere with the same care you would guard something valuable. When negativity tries to enter your thoughts, you counter it with truth. When discouragement tries to settle, you confront it with hope. When impatience or irritation tries to rise, you breathe deeply and realign with purpose. You become intentional about the tone you carry, the posture you hold, and the presence you invite into your surroundings. You realize that you have the God-given authority to create an atmosphere that nourishes your spirit instead of draining it. You begin to walk through the day with an internal steadiness that cannot be shaken by circumstance. As you reclaim control, you also begin recognizing triggers that once pulled you into negative cycles. You recognize the tone of voice, the situation, the thought pattern, or the emotional shift that used to set you on a downward spiral. Now, instead of falling into the pattern automatically, you recognize it early enough to interrupt it. You pause, you breathe, you pray, you respond differently. These small moments accumulate into powerful transformation. What once controlled your reactions loses its grip. What once dictated your emotions no longer has authority. You begin to feel the strength of your spiritual maturity showing up in the moments that matter. This is how cycles break, not in one grand moment, but through daily decisions that gradually shift your inner world and elevate your spiritual posture. As the day progresses, you begin to notice how reclaiming your atmosphere affects every interaction. You bring peace into conversations where tension once rose. You bring clarity into places where confusion waited to enter. You bring stability into moments that once overwhelmed you. You are not simply reacting to the day, you are directing it. Your atmosphere begins to reflect the presence of God that surrounds you. People feel calm when they approach you. Chaos loses its influence when it comes near you. Negativity cannot cling to you because your spirit is too aligned, too aware, too guarded by truth. Reclaiming your atmosphere turns your presence into a shield, a boundary, a declaration that says, nothing unassigned by God has permission to disturb your peace. As you continue breaking negative patterns, you realize that some cycles were not just emotional. They were spiritual. They were places where the enemy attempted to steal your focus, distract your mind, or weaken your faith. But through prayer, awareness, and intentional declarations, You begin reclaiming territory in your thought life. You begin standing in your authority. You begin refusing to give access to anything that does not align with God's will for you. You recognize the importance of spiritual discipline, not as a duty, but as a lifeline. The more consistent you are, the easier it becomes to identify when negativity tries to return. You feel the shift immediately. You sense the disturbance, and you take authority before it grows roots. This is what reclaiming your atmosphere looks like: being spiritually alert, emotionally steady, and mentally anchored in truth. Breaking patterns also means embracing new habits that reflect who you are becoming. You start choosing words that uplift rather than words that diminish. You start giving energy to thoughts that strengthen you rather than weaken you. You begin investing time into practices that restore your spirit: prayer, reflection, stillness, gratitude, worship. These practices build new pathways in your heart and mind. They create a spiritual rhythm that supports peace instead of chaos, clarity instead of confusion, purpose instead of passivity. These new patterns become your armor. They become your grounding. They become the structure of your day. Every time you reinforce them, you weaken the grip of old cycles. As your atmosphere shifts, your perception shifts as well. You begin to see challenges as opportunities rather than threats. You begin to interpret delays as divine timing rather than roadblocks. You begin recognizing that God is present even in the smallest moments. You feel less overwhelmed because your spirit is no longer fighting against itself. You feel more focused because your mind is no longer cluttered with patterns that pull you away from purpose. You feel more confident because your emotions are no longer tied to circumstances. This sense of alignment becomes a quiet strength that carries you through the day. Breaking negative patterns also requires grace. Grace for yourself, grace for your journey, and grace for the time it takes to grow. You will have days where old thoughts try to creep back in, where emotions try to rise again, where cycles try to knock on the door of your mind. But now you recognize these moments not as setbacks, but as opportunities to exercise your authority. You respond with wisdom instead of self-criticism. You respond with awareness instead of frustration. You respond with truth instead of fear. This grace becomes part of your strength. It keeps you moving forward without becoming discouraged when patterns resurface. You understand that growth is not linear, but every moment of awareness brings you closer to breaking the cycle completely. As you continue in this journey, you begin reclaiming not just your inner atmosphere, but also the atmosphere around you. You take authority over your home. You take authority over your workspace. You take authority over the environments you enter. You carry peace into places where anxiety once dominated. You carry clarity into situations that once felt chaotic. You carry purpose into moments that once felt empty. Your presence begins to shift spaces because the atmosphere you cultivate within begins to overflow outward. You are no longer the person shaped by old cycles. You are the person who breaks cycles, commands peace, and carries the presence of God wherever you go. Through this unfolding transformation, your day becomes shaped not by what once bound you, but by the authority you now walk in. The cycles that once defined you lose their narrative. The atmosphere that once drained you now strengthens you. The patterns that once held you back now mark the testimony of who you have risen above. You reclaim control over your atmosphere by deciding daily that nothing has the power to govern your peace except the presence of God within you. Establishing spiritual discipline that anchors your thoughts, emotions, and decisions begins with realizing that your inner world will always reflect the consistency of your spiritual practices. Discipline is not about rigidity, it is about stability. It is about choosing daily rhythms that align you with God's presence so deeply that no matter what unfolds around you, your spirit remains grounded. Spiritual discipline is the internal structure that holds you steady when life tries to pull you in different directions. It is the quiet commitment to keep your heart open, your mind clear, and your spirit aligned. It is waking up each day with the understanding that your connection with God is not a moment, it's a lifestyle. It is the decision to cultivate habits that strengthen your faith, deepen your awareness, and protect your peace. Discipline is what shapes the environment of your inner life. Without it, emotions drift, thoughts scatter, and decisions become reactive. With it, you step into the day anchored, confident, and spiritually aware. As you begin creating this discipline, you recognize the importance of intentional moments with God. It may start with a simple prayer at the beginning of your day, a moment of stillness where your heart becomes quiet enough to hear. It may be reading a scripture that aligns your thoughts with truth. It may be listening to a message that stirs your spirit. What matters is not the form, but the consistency. It is the rhythm of returning to God again and again until that rhythm becomes a natural part of your daily life. When your spirit becomes accustomed to seeking God early, the noise of the world loses its ability to overwhelm you. When your mind becomes familiar with truth, lies lose their influence. When your emotions become rooted in divine presence, instability loses its grip. Discipline strengthens you from the inside out. Every moment you give to spiritual growth becomes a seed that shapes your responses throughout the day. As this discipline develops, you begin to notice its effect on your thoughts. Your mind becomes clearer, more focused, more aligned with heaven. Thoughts that once spiraled into anxiety now find grounding in truth. Thoughts that once wandered into distraction now stay aligned with purpose. Spiritual discipline becomes like a filter. Anything that does not match God's truth is released, and anything that strengthens your spirit is embraced. You begin to think with intention. You think with clarity. You think with spiritual awareness. Instead of reacting to every thought that enters your mind, you begin choosing which thoughts deserve space. This is where spiritual discipline becomes transformative. It trains your mind to recognize what is from God and what is not. It gives you the strength to release thoughts that lead to discouragement, doubt, or confusion. It helps you shape a mental atmosphere that supports peace instead of chaos. As your thoughts come into alignment, your emotions begin to stabilize as well. Emotions are powerful, but without discipline, they can become unpredictable. They can shift based on circumstances, moods, or unexpected challenges. But when your emotions are anchored in spiritual discipline, they no longer control your day. You feel deeply, but you respond wisely. You experience emotions without allowing them to dictate your decisions. You create space for emotion without surrendering your peace to it. Discipline gives you the ability to step back, breathe, and recenter. It gives your emotions room to settle instead of spiraling. You begin to notice the difference between how you feel and who you are. You learn to let God's presence regulate your emotional world. When heaviness tries to settle, peace rises to meet it. When frustration tries to build, patience softens it. When fear tries to whisper, faith interrupts it. Spiritual discipline becomes the anchor that keeps your emotional life steady and grounded. As your emotions become anchored, your decision-making begins to shift as well. Decisions made from a place of spiritual discipline carry wisdom, clarity, and purpose. They are not rushed. They are not influenced by pressure. They are not driven by fear or insecurity. When you are spiritually grounded, you make decisions from a place of peace. You become more aware of God's leading and more sensitive to his guidance. You begin to discern what aligns with your purpose and what distracts from it. Discipline helps you see beyond the moment and into the long-term impact of your choices. It helps you recognize when something is good but not right for you, when something is comfortable but not purposeful, when something is available but not aligned. Spiritual discipline develops your ability to choose wisely, consistently, and intentionally. As discipline deepens in your life, you start to build rhythms that reinforce your spiritual strength. These rhythms may include prayer, worship, meditation, reflection, gratitude, or scripture. They do not have to be long, but they must be intentional. They become the pillars that support your inner world. They become the quiet practices that strengthen you before challenges arise. They become the daily alignment that positions you to hear from God clearly. The more consistent you become, the more sensitive your spirit grows. You begin to notice when something feels off. You recognize when your peace is being disturbed. You sense when your spirit needs replenishment. Discipline builds awareness. Awareness protects your alignment. Alignment strengthens your walk with God. As you continue practicing spiritual discipline, you begin to experience a deeper sense of inner order. Your days no longer feel scattered or rushed. Your mind no longer feels cluttered or overwhelmed. Your emotions no longer pull you in conflicting directions. You begin to move through your day with a quiet confidence that flows from your connection with God. You feel grounded even when circumstances shift. You feel steady even when challenges arise. You feel centered even when life pulls at you from every side. Discipline becomes the framework that holds you together. It becomes the structure that keeps you aligned with truth. It becomes the foundation that gives your spirit the strength to rise above negativity, distraction, and emotional turbulence. Spiritual discipline also gives you the strength to say no when needed. It helps you set boundaries that protect your peace. It helps you recognize when something demands more of you than God has assigned. It helps you pull back from environments that drain your spirit. It helps you withdraw from conversations that steal your focus. It helps you distance yourself from habits that weaken your purpose. Discipline is not only about what you do, it is also about what you refuse to allow into your life. It is the courage to walk away from anything that disrupts your connection with God. It is the wisdom to prioritize what strengthens you and release what distracts you. It is the commitment to honor your spiritual well-being, even when it requires difficult choices. As this discipline becomes part of you, you begin noticing its effect on your interactions with others. You speak with more grace because your emotions are steady. You respond with more wisdom because your mind is clear. You listen more deeply because your spirit is aligned. You carry a presence that others feel, calm, grounded, focused, spiritually aware. You become a source of peace in environments where chaos once dominated. You become a voice of clarity in conversations filled with confusion. You become a steady anchor for those who feel unsettled. Spiritual discipline not only transforms your inner world, it influences the world around you. Your presence becomes a reflection of the stability God has cultivated within you. As your discipline strengthens, you begin to see challenges differently. You do not crumble under pressure because your spirit has been trained to stand firm. You do not surrender to discouragement because your mind has been filled with truth. You do not fall back into negativity because your emotions have learned to remain steady. Discipline creates resilience. It forms a spiritual backbone that does not break easily. It shapes a mindset that refuses to be overwhelmed. It builds endurance that carries you through seasons of testing. It teaches you to rely on God not only in crisis but in consistency. This resilience becomes one of the greatest gifts discipline brings into your life. Every time you begin to realize that spiritual discipline is not a burden, it is a gift. It brings order where there was disorder. It brings peace where there was inner conflict. It brings clarity where there was confusion. It brings strength where there was weakness. It aligns you with God so deeply that even when storms arise, your faith does not waver. Discipline becomes the quiet force that shapes everything about your day. Your words, your decisions, your focus, your interactions, your posture, your peace. It is the invisible structure that stabilizes your visible life. It is the foundation that prepares you to walk into every day with intention, awareness, and alignment. As you continue cultivating these disciplines, you begin experiencing the presence of God, not as a momentary encounter, but as a continuous reality. You feel his guidance in your thoughts. You sense his peace in your emotions. You hear his direction in your decisions. Your life becomes intertwined with his presence in a way that strengthens you, no matter what you face. This is the beauty of spiritual discipline. It doesn't just anchor your day, it anchors your soul. It keeps you rooted. It keeps you steady. It keeps you aligned with the one who holds your future in his hand. When you invite God's guidance to navigate opportunities, challenges, and divine appointments, you step into a rhythm that lifts your day out of the ordinary and into the realm of the intentional. You begin to recognize that you are not moving through your hours by accident, nor are you stumbling into situations without purpose. You become aware that every moment has the potential to carry divine weight, and every encounter can be infused with meaning. When you open your heart early in the morning and say, Lord, lead me, you posture yourself to walk, not by impulse, not by habit, not by emotional reaction, but by spiritual sensitivity. You become more attuned to the subtle impressions of the Holy Spirit, more aware of the whisper that nudges you toward the right decision, the right conversation, the right opportunity that aligns with God's will. You begin to trust that when God orders your steps, even in places that look uncertain, hidden purpose is unfolding beneath the surface and guiding you toward outcomes you could not achieve through your own wisdom alone. As you move through the day with this posture, you learn to slow down internally, even while life moves quickly around you. You become more discerning about the environments you enter and the intentions of those around you. You feel a sense of clarity rising as you move from one moment to the next, not because everything makes sense at first glance, but because you realize you are not moving alone. You are moving with the one who sees the beginning and the end at the same time. Divine guidance becomes the force that steadies your emotions when uncertainty tries to unsettle you. It becomes the anchor that keeps you from rushing into decisions driven by pressure or distraction. It becomes the gentle reminder that no door God intends for you will require you to compromise your peace, diminish your value, or forfeit your spiritual alignment. You start to understand that the way God guides you rarely looks dramatic. It often feels like a quiet conviction, a subtle redirection, or a protected pause that keeps you from going where you were never meant to be. When you carry this awareness, you start to interpret challenges differently. Instead of seeing them as interruptions, you begin to see them as invitations. You recognize that God often speaks through what shifts your plans, slows your progress, or confronts your expectations. Challenges become classrooms, and difficulties become training grounds for deeper wisdom. You find yourself asking, even in tension, Lord, what are you showing me here? And suddenly what looked like inconvenience turns into preparation. What looked like opposition becomes sharpening. What looked like delay becomes alignment. You begin to see that God's guidance isn't only revealed in the smooth moments of your day, but also in the uncomfortable ones that stretch you beyond your predictable patterns. You become more patient, more reflective, and more spiritually aware because you realize that God's voice often echoes loudest in places where your own strength feels insufficient. As you continue to walk through the day, you learn to recognize divine appointments. These are the moments that feel like coincidence at first glance, but later reveal themselves as intentional intersections orchestrated by God. You begin noticing that certain conversations arrive at the exact time you need them. Certain people appear with the exact encouragement or wisdom you didn't know you were missing, and certain opportunities open only after you've prayed for direction. You become more sensitive to the people God places in your path, not just the ones who help you, but also the ones you are meant to help. You recognize that divine appointments don't always look spectacular. Sometimes they are quiet exchanges, small gestures, or simple interactions that God uses to shift the course of your day or someone else's. You start to value moments of connection, treating them with more intention and kindness, knowing that God often works through what seems ordinary. As your mindset shifts, you also become more aware of the opportunities God sends your way. Not every opportunity looks attractive at first. Some require courage, stretching, or stepping beyond what feels comfortable. But because you've committed your day to God, you develop a sharper internal compass that helps you distinguish between distractions and divine openings. You begin to feel the difference between something that drains you and something that draws you deeper into your purpose. You pay attention to what brings peace, even if it demands effort, and you learn not to rush into what brings excitement but lacks spiritual grounding. Opportunities that come from God will always carry a sense of alignment. They pull you forward in ways that honor your calling rather than compromise it. They encourage growth rather than confusion. They bring clarity rather than chaos. And as you move through the day with this awareness, you become more confident in saying yes to what God is breathing on and no to what is simply noise. This sensitivity also helps you navigate the unexpected turns in your schedule. There are days when interruptions come without warning, when plans shift without explanation, and when moments arise that seem to disrupt what you thought the day would look like. But when you've already anchored your day in prayer, those disruptions lose their power to destabilize you. You don't panic as quickly. You don't react as impulsively, and you don't crumble under the weight of pressure. Instead, you pause, you listen, you let God reorient your thinking. Sometimes the unexpected moments are the ones where God does the most important work. What felt like a detour can lead you into protection. What felt like a setback can make room for breakthrough. What seemed like disappointment can open space for God to reveal something better than what you had planned. Prayer-trained guidance helps you trust the shifts, even when they don't look favorable at first glance. As you walk through your day with this posture of divine awareness, you begin to notice how your emotional responses start to mature. Decisions that once overwhelmed you become easier to handle because you no longer feel like you are carrying the weight alone. Thoughts that once spiraled into anxiety now quiet themselves as you return to the truth that God is leading you. Situations that once triggered frustration or fear become opportunities to lean more deeply into God's wisdom. And gradually you grow into a version of yourself that moves with more grace, more patience, and more inner strength. This transformation doesn't happen through willpower, but through alignment. Alignment that happens when you intentionally invite God to guide every layer of your day. And as your confidence in God's leading grows, you also begin to trust your spiritual instincts more. You become better at recognizing the tone of God's direction. Sometimes He directs you through peace that settles over your spirit.